Welcome! Today I will be talking about one of the most debated concepts in change management, which is resistance to change. Usually people perceive resistance as a negative, whilst in fact is not necessarily the case. First of all, why do people resist change? Well, actually it's a human reaction, it's an emotional reaction, and that's linked to a basic element. When change is implemented, people tend to lose control. What does that mean? Let's take the example of someone that has been working for the same company for 10 years. This person, goes to work, same time, doing exactly the same thing, they see the same colleagues, they receive their salary at intervals, everything is pretty much predictable. All of a sudden, for example, a merger is announced and the person basically loses their point of reference. Oh my gosh, am I going to get a job? Will I lose my job? What is going to happen to this company? Basically, they lose control. The status quo is going to fundamentally change. That's actually a perfectly normal reaction. There are some people that are more resilient than others and therefore are capable of bouncing back more quickly than other individuals. There is a fantastic model that I think is perfect to explain how people react to change, and it was elaborated by Dr. Kubler-Ross when dealing with patients that were made aware that they were going to die. Of course, this is an extreme situation, but it was noticed afterwards that the process that individuals go through is exactly the same when, for example, they have to deal with change in an organization. Of course, if it is a minimal change, like for example working, on floor 1 rather than floor 3, the effect will be not as heavy as, for example, in a case of a merger or in a case of a reorganization. How does this model called the 5 stages of grief work? Well, basically Dr. Kubler-Ross said that when there is change, there are 5 different stages that all individuals go through. Basically the difference is the speed. So some people go through these 5 stages more quickly than others. The first reaction when change is announced is denial. It's just like, I can't believe this cannot be happening. This is not true. So for example, a redundancy is announced and the person is informed that their role is at risk, and they go, this is not really, this cannot be happen to me. It's absolutely not an option. It's actually followed by anger. The person basically is resentful towards the organization. So they've been working with the organization for something like 10 years and they say, oh well, I've always worked here and actually they're throwing me away. The company is not valuing my contribution anymore. Actually, they want to get rid of me. So it's normal for the individual to be angry. In some cases, this anger is voiced. In some cases, actually, it's more like passive-aggressive, which is probably the worst-case scenario, because passive-aggressive people are individuals that basically do not admit that they are resisting change. So we will look at what to do in order to overcome resistance to change. The third stage is bargaining. Bargaining, basically, it's a phase where the person starts to realize that the change is occurring and basically is not going to go away. So it's not going to be swept under the carpet. The fourth stage is depression. It's actually when people realize that the change is going to occur, but they're frozen, they're apathic, they basically feel completely deflated. And luckily this phase is followed by acceptance. It's actually when people realize that the change is going to occur and they are going to move on. They actually move along with the change. So for example, they start to accept that the merger is going to occur, or for example, they start to accept that their post is going to be made redundant. Acceptance doesn't mean that the person agrees with the change the company is going to implement, but they do accept that there is going to be that course of event. The difficulty when dealing with resistance is that people do not move at the same speed. As I said before, some people are more resilient than others. So for example, some people may get sort of stuck in the anger. So they tend to be very, to voice their concern, to be very spiteful toward the management, towards the company, or even worse, actually, as I said before, they tend to be very passive aggressive. Some people, for example, tend to get stuck in the bargaining position or more often in the depression position. So when dealing with change, always think about resistance and think about this model, because it will help managers and executives to manage change more effectively, realizing that this course is absolutely normal and that basically not everyone goes through these basically 5 stages at the same speed, and therefore some individuals may need more reinforcement and more help than others. So resistance to change is not necessarily an evil. Actually, in some cases it could be very helpful, because people may voice some concerns that may have actually genuine justification. It's not a very good idea not to focus on how to manage resistance and actually just to act as who cares, we are going to implement it anyway, because in most cases basically the employees or the line managers are those that are going to implement the change. If you don't get them on board, the change is going to fail. So take into consideration resistance. Don't think of resistance as a negative, but consider it as a positive element that can be proactively managed. Don't try to swipe this element under the carpet. Thank you so much for watching.